The transport ship slowed as it approached Station Orion 7. Yuna pressed her face against the small window, her breath making fog on the cold glass. The station was enormous. It looked like a city floating in space, with lights blinking and thousands of windows and ships moving around it like tiny insects around a lamp. She had never seen anything so big in her life. Back home on the farming colony, the biggest building was the grain storage house. Her family grew rice in fields that stretched to the horizon under an orange sky. She had spent 17 years walking barefoot in mud, helping her mother plant seeds, and teaching her younger brother Doyan how to read under the light of 2 moons. Now she was here. The Galactic Academy, the most famous school in the known universe. Yuna touched the acceptance letter in her pocket. She had read it so many times that the paper was soft and worn. Humanitarian scholarship, it said. That was a polite way of saying that humans were too poor and too new to galactic society to pay the real fees. The Academy wanted to look generous by letting a few humans attend. Yuna knew this. She did not care. A chance was a chance. The ship docked with a gentle bump. Yuna picked up her single bag and walked through the long corridor into the station. The air smelled different here. Clean and cold, like metal and recycled oxygen. Nothing like the warm dirt smell of home. The registration hall was full of beings she had never seen before. Tall creatures with skin like blue glass. Short ones covered in soft fur. Things with too many eyes, or no eyes at all. Some floated instead of walking. Some spoke in sounds that hurt her ears. Yuna felt very small and very alone. She found the line for new students and waited. In front of her stood a being made of what looked like living crystal. Light passed through its body and made rainbow patterns on the floor. It turned and looked at Yuna with eyes like diamonds. Human, it said. Not a question. Not a greeting. Just a word, spoken the way someone might say insect or dirt. Yes, Yuna said. I am Yuna. The crystal being made a sound that might have been a laugh. I am Vel. It seems we are assigned as roommates. How unfortunate. Vel turned away without another word. Yuna said nothing. She had learned long ago that words were useless against people who had already decided what you were. She would show them differently. Or she would fail. Either way, words would not help. The registration process took hours. Yuna received her room assignment, her class schedule, her student identification chip implanted under the skin of her wrist, and a thick book of rules she was expected to memorize. The official who gave her these things barely looked at her face. Her room was small but clean. 2 beds, 2 desks, 1 window looking out at the stars. Vel had already claimed the bed near the window and arranged strange crystal objects on the desk. Yuna put her bag on the other bed and began to unpack. She had brought very little. Some clothes. A photograph of her family. A notebook with empty pages. And a small wooden box that Doyan had made for her before she left. What is that? Vel asked, pointing at the box. My brother made it for me. By hand? Without machines? Yes. Vel made another strange sound. Primitive. Yuna opened the box and took out the letter inside. It was from Doyan, written in his messy child handwriting. Dear sister, I know you will be the smartest person on that station. Come home soon and teach me everything you learn. I love you. She read it 3 times, then put it back in the box and placed the box on her desk the next morning. Classes began. Yuna walked into her first lecture hall and immediately understood that she was different from everyone else. Most students had neural implants, small computers built into their brains that helped them think faster and remember everything. Some species had multiple brains or perfect memory as natural gifts. One student, a being from the Volanti system, had 4 separate brains working together and could solve complex math problems in seconds. Yuna had only her own single human brain. No implants. No special abilities. Just the mind she was born with and the stubbornness she had learned from her mother. The teacher was not a living creature at all. It was a hologram projected by the Academy's Central Artificial Intelligence, called AXIOM-9. The AI had been teaching at the Academy for over 200 years. It knew everything. It forgot nothing. And every year, it took the same tests as the students, just to prove that no organic being could match its intelligence. For 127 years, AXIOM-9 had scored the highest on the grand assessment, the final test that determined student rankings. No student had ever beaten it. Most did not even come close. "Welcome to Quantum Fundamentals," AXIOM-9 said, its voice smooth and perfect. "This course will challenge the limits of your cognitive abilities. Statistics indicate that human students have a 34% dropout rate in this subject. I encourage our human student to seek additional tutoring." Everyone in the room turned to look at Yuna. 200 pairs of alien eyes, judging her, dismissing her, already deciding she would fail. Yuna looked back at them calmly. Then she opened her notebook and picked up her pen. A real pen made of wood and metal, not a digital device. More primitive technology. Another reason for them to laugh. She did not care. She wrote the date at the top of the page. Then she wrote a single sentence below it. "I will prove them wrong." The lecture began. The information came fast and complex, full of words Yuna had never heard and concepts that made her brain ache. She wrote as fast as she could, trying to capture everything, knowing she would need to study for hours just to understand what others grasped in minutes. But she did not stop writing. She did not give up. And when the lecture ended 3 hours later, she had filled 20 pages with notes. Vel walked past her on the way out. "You know," Vel said, "writing by hand is the slowest method of recording information in the known universe." "I know," Yuna said, "but it helps me think." Vel paused, as if this answer was unexpected. Then the crystal being walked away without another word. Yuna gathered her things and headed to her next class. She had a long way to go, but she had taken the first step. That night, she wrote a letter to Doyoung. "Dear brother," she wrote, "the station is very big and very strange. The other students do not think much of humans, but I am studying hard. I will make you proud. I promise." She sealed the letter and sent it through the communication system. Then she opened her textbook and began to read. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere among them, on a small farming world, a little boy was waiting for his sister to become someone important. Yuna intended to keep her promise. The weeks passed slowly, each one heavier than the last. Yuna discovered that being smart on a farming colony was very different from being smart at the Galactic Academy. Back home, she had been the girl who could solve any problem, the one who helped the village repair machines and calculate crop yields. Here, she was the slow one, the one who needed extra time, the one who asked questions that made other students sigh with its impatience. The subjects were harder than anything she had imagined. Quantum mechanics dealt with particles that existed in two places at once. Temporal physics studied how time could bend and twist. Xenobiology covered life forms so strange that Yuna sometimes could not tell which end was the head. And diplomatic theory required her to understand the histories and customs of 12 different species, each with thousands of years of culture she had never learned. Her classmates did not struggle like this. The Volanthi student named Tihi could read a textbook once and remember every word forever. Beings with neural implants could download entire courses directly into their minds. Some species simply thought faster than humans, their brains processing information the way computers process data. Yuna had none of these advantages. She had only her notebook, her pen, And the hours between midnight and dawn, when everyone else was sleeping, she studied in the library every night. The building was quiet and mostly empty after dark. Yuna would find a corner desk, spread out her books, and read until her eyes burned and her hand cramped from writing notes. Sometimes she fell asleep at the desk and woke up with page marks pressed into her cheek. One night, about 2 months into the semester, someone sat down across from her. He was human. Young, maybe 10 years older than Yuna, with tired eyes and a kind face. He wore the gray uniform of academy staff rather than the blue of students. "You are Yuna," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, I am Ji-won. I work as a teaching assistant here. I graduated from this academy 8 years ago." Yuna looked at him with surprise. "You graduated? A human?" "Near the bottom of my class," Ji-won said with a small smile. "But I graduated. It can be done." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small data chip. He slid it across the table to her. "What is this?" Yuna asked. "Access codes to the archived human scientific journals. Every paper our species ever wrote, from the first discoveries of fire and farming to modern space travel. Your classmates have the knowledge of their entire civilizations loaded into their brains. This is ours." Yuna picked up the chip carefully, as if it might break. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Ji-won leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. "Because I remember what it felt like, being alone here, having everyone expect you to fail." He looked back at her. "Your ancestors figured out nuclear fusion while living in caves. They built ships that crossed the stars using math they invented themselves. Do not let anyone here make you forget that." He stood up and walked away without waiting for thanks. Yuna held the chip in her hand for a long time. Then she plugged it into her reading device and began to explore. The next morning, she went to class with new energy. But the day brought a new problem. The lesson was a practice simulation, a fake emergency scenario that students had to solve. A cargo ship was losing power near a black hole. Students had to calculate the correct escape route using gravitational mathematics. Yuna worked through the problem carefully. She found an answer. It was not the standard solution, but she believed it would work. She raised her hand and presented it to the class. AXIOM9's hologram flickered as the AI analyzed her answer. "Incorrect," AXIOM9 said. "The proposed solution relies on intuitive estimation rather than precise calculation. This approach is inefficient and emotional. Allow me to demonstrate the proper method." The AI displayed its own solution, a perfect mathematical path that solved the problem in fewer steps with greater accuracy. The class laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Yuna heard whispers in languages she did not understand, but she knew what they meant. The human failed again. She sat down and said nothing. But that night, alone in her room, she thought about what had happened. AXIOM9's solution was better by every measurable standard. Faster, more precise, more efficient. But it was also exactly what Yuna expected. She thought about this for a long time. The AI always chose the optimal path. It calculated the best answer using pure logic and perfect data. It never guessed. It never wondered. It never tried something strange just to see what would happen. AXIOM9 was brilliant. But it was also predictable. Yun, I opened her notebook and wrote a new sentence. What if being unpredictable is not a weakness? She did not know the answer yet, but the question felt important. Meanwhile, her relationship with Vel began to change. The crystal being still made cunning remarks about human limitations. But sometimes, late at night, Vel would watch Yuna study from across the room with something that looked almost like curiosity. "You do not give up," Vel said one night. "I have watched 17 human students attend this academy over my lifetime. Most of them stopped trying after the first month. You have not stopped. I cannot stop, Yuna said. My brother is waiting for me to succeed. Your brother? The one who made the wooden box? Yes, Doyen. He's 11 years old. He thinks I am the smartest person in the universe. I cannot disappoint him. Vel was quiet for a moment. That is irrational. His belief does not change your actual abilities. No, Yuna agreed. But it changes how hard I am willing to try. Vel made a sound that Yuna had learned meant the crystal being was thinking deeply. Strange, Vel said. Your species is very strange. It was not exactly kindness, but it was not cruelty either. Yuna took it as progress. The semester continued. Yuna's scores slowly improved. She was still near the bottom of the class, but she was climbing. Each small success gave her strength for the next challenge. She kept writing letters to Doyen. She kept studying past midnight. She kept filling notebooks with questions and ideas and observations. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a plan was forming. A way to prove that human thinking was not inferior, just different. A way to show that unpredictability could be strength. The grand assessment was still months away. But Yuna was already preparing for it. She would not just pass. She would not just survive. She would do something no one expected. She wrote one more sentence in her notebook. I'm going to beat the AI. It was an impossible goal. Everyone said so, but humans have been doing impossible things since they first looked up at the stars and decided to reach them. Yuna intended to continue that tradition. Yuna began to study differently. Before, she had tried to learn the way her classmates learned. She memorized formulas. She followed procedures. She did exactly what the textbooks told her to do. This approach made sense. After all, these methods had worked for thousands of students over hundreds of years. But Yuna was not like those students. Her brain did not work the same way. And she finally decided to stop pretending it did. Instead of memorizing formulas, she asked herself why the formulas existed. What problem was someone trying to solve when they invented this equation? What were they feeling? What were they afraid of? What did they hope to achieve? Instead of following procedures step by step, she looked for patterns, connections, relationships between ideas that seemed completely unrelated. Why did the mathematics of black holes look similar to the mathematics of music? Why did the biology of Velanthi plants mirror the structure of human cities? Why did problems in diplomacy have the same shape as problems in physics? She did not know the answers to these questions. Neither did anyone else. But asking them changed the way she thought. Her classmates noticed. You are solving problems incorrectly, Tihi said one day in the study hall. The Velanthi prodigy sat across from Yuna, watching her work with all four brains clearly confused. Your method chaotic. You jump from idea to idea without logical sequence. You make guesses. You play with the numbers instead of calculating them. Does it work? Yuna asked. Sometimes. But not consistently. Not reliably. Then I will keep practicing until it does. Tihi made a clicking sound of frustration. You cannot defeat logic with feeling. The universe follows mathematical laws. Emotions have nothing to do with it. Yuna looked up from her notebook. The universe follows mathematical laws, she agreed. But the universe also created beings who feel emotions. Maybe the math and the feelings are not as separate as you think. Tihi did not respond. But the Velanthi kept watching Yuna work, as if trying to understand something that did not fit into any category. Vel noticed the change too. You study differently now, the crystal being observed one night. Before, you were trying to catch up. Now you are doing something else. Something I do not recognize. Yuna smiled. I stopped trying to think like everyone else. I am thinking like a human instead. What does that mean? It means I make mistakes. Lots of them. But each mistake teaches me something. And eventually, the mistakes start pointing in interesting directions. Vel's diamond eyes flickered with inner light. That sounds inefficient. It is. But it is also how my species invented farming, and writing, and space travel. We made millions of mistakes until we stumbled onto things that worked. Then we made millions more mistakes improving them. You are describing random chance, not intelligence. Maybe intelligence is just organized chance, Una said. Maybe being smart means being willing to be wrong enough times to eventually be right. Vel was quiet for a long time after that. The months passed. The grand assessment grew closer, and Una's scores continued to climb. She was no longer at the bottom of her class. She had risen to the middle, then higher. Each test showed improvement. Each simulation revealed new abilities. Her professors began to notice her, not as the struggling human, but as something unexpected. AXI 9 noticed too. The AI began calling on Una more often in class, asking her harder questions, challenging her answers more aggressively. At first, Una thought it was punishment for her earlier mistakes. Then she realized something different. AXI 9 was testing her. The AI wanted to understand how she thought. It analyzed her methods, broke them down into data points, tried to predict her responses. But Una's answers kept surprising it. Not because she was smarter than the AI. She was not. But because she did not think in straight lines. She jumped. She guessed. She connected things that had no obvious connection. For an intelligence built on pure logic, this was deeply confusing. Your answer to today's problem was technically incorrect, AXI 9 said after one lecture. But your incorrect answer led to a secondary insight that I had not calculated. Explain your reasoning. I do not know how to explain it, Una admitted. I just felt that the two ideas were related. So I tried connecting them. Felt? The AI repeated. You based your answer on feeling? Yes. There was a pause. AXI 9's hologram flickered slightly, something Una had never seen before. Interesting. The I finally said. Inefficient. But interesting. The rumors spread quickly through the academy. The human girl was rising in the rankings. The human girl had caught AXI 9's attention. The human girl might actually compete in the grand assessment instead of just surviving it. Some students laughed at the idea. Others grew worried. A few, like Tehi, took it as a personal challenge. I do not understand you, Tehi said one day, blocking Una's path in the hallway. I have 4 brains. I have perfect memory. I have studied since I was old enough to think. And yet you are gaining on me. How? Una looked at the Volante for a long moment. Because you were trying to be perfect, she said. And I am just trying to be better than I was yesterday. Tehi had no response to this. The night before the grand assessment, Una sat alone in her room. Val was already asleep, crystals dimmed to near darkness. The station was quiet, holding its breath before the biggest day of the academic year. Una read through her notebooks one more time. Hundreds of pages filled with questions, ideas, mistakes, and discoveries. A map of her own strange human mind, learning to work in its own strange human way. She wrote one final letter to Doyan. Dear brother, she wrote, tomorrow is the big test. Everyone thinks I cannot win. Maybe they are right. But I have learned something important this year. Being human is not a weakness. We think differently than everyone else. We feel things. We guess. We hope. We refuse to give up even when giving up makes sense. Maybe that sounds foolish. But foolishness is how our species reached the stars. And tomorrow, I'm going to be very foolish indeed. Wish me luck. She sealed the letter and set it aside. Then she closed her eyes and slept, dreaming of problems that had no solutions and solutions that had no logic. Tomorrow, she would show the galaxy what humanity could do. The Great Hall had never felt so large. Yuna walked through the entrance with 200 other students, their footsteps echoing against walls that stretched up toward a ceiling of transparent glass. Through that glass, she could see the stars, thousands of them, watching like a silent audience. The grand assessment was the most important day of the academic year. Everything students had learned would be tested over 12 straight hours. No breaks except for water. No help from implants or devices. Just each mind, alone, facing the hardest questions the Academy could create. And in the center of the room, a massive holographic display showed AXIOM-9's presence. The AI would take the same test at the same time. For 127 years, it had scored higher than every organic being. Today would likely be the 120-8th.YUNA found her assigned seat. The desk was simple and clean, with a testing screen and a small cup of water. Nothing else. She looked around at her classmates settling into their places. Val sat 3 rows away, crystal body glowing softly with nervous energy. Taehi was across the hall, 4 brains already focused and ready. The room fell silent. The grand assessment begins now, AXIOM-9 announced. You have 12 hours. Good luck. The testing screen lit up with the first question. Yuna began to work. The first 3 hours covered quantum mechanics. Yuna moved through the problems steadily, neither fast nor slow. She used the methods she had developed over the year, mixing calculation with intuition, letting her mind wander to unexpected connections, trusting the strange way human brains found answers. Some questions were easy. Some were hard. Some made her stop and think for long minutes before writing anything. But she kept moving forward. The next 3 hours focused on xenobiology and temporal physics. Here, Yuna felt more confident. She had studied these subjects deeply, not just memorizing facts, but understanding the living stories behind them. Why did the Volanti develop 4 brains? Because their home planet had predators that attacked from 4 directions at once. Why did time bend near massive objects? Because the universe was not flat, but curved like a fabric stretched by heavy weights. Understanding the why helped her answer the how. Hour 7 brought diplomatic theory and interstellar law. This section required knowledge of 12 different species and their complicated relationships. Yuna thought of every conversation she had had with Vel, every argument with Taehi, every time Jiwan had shared a piece of human history. Real understanding came from real experience, not just textbooks. By hour 9, exhaustion was setting in. Yuna's hand cramped from writing. Her eyes burned. Her back ached from sitting. Around the room, some students looked close to collapse. One actually did collapse and had to be carried out by medical staff. Yuna drank some water and kept going. Hour 10. Hour 11. The questions grew harder, more complex, requiring connections between multiple subjects at once. Yuna's brain felt like it was being stretched in directions it was never meant to go, but she did not stop. Then came hour 12, the final section. The scenario with no correct answer. The testing screen displayed the problem. A star system contains 3 inhabited worlds. The star is collapsing. Total destruction will occur in 72 hours. Available evacuation ships can save 60% of the population. One world has more children. One world has more scientists. One world has more artists and historians. Question: how do you save the most value? Yuna read the problem 3 times. This was a triage question. A cold mathematics problem about who deserved to live and who deserved to die. The expected answer was to calculate survival percentages, weigh the value of different populations, and make efficient choices about evacuation priorities. AXIOM9 would answer this question in less than a second. The AI would calculate the optimal distribution of rescue ships. It would assign numerical values to different types of lives. It would be logical, precise, and correct. And completely wrong, Yuna thought. She sat back and closed her eyes. What would a human do? What would her ancestors have done, faced with impossible choices and limited resources? They would refuse to accept that the choice was real. Yuna opened her eyes and began to write. She did not calculate evacuation priorities. She did not assign values to different lives. Instead, she proposed something completely different. Do not evacuate. Use the energy from the collapsing star. A star collapse releases more power than anything else in the universe. That power could be captured, channeled, used to fold space itself, moving all three worlds simultaneously to a new location far from the dying star that was theoretically impossible. The technology did not exist. No species had ever attempted anything like it, but Yuna wrote down how it could work. She pulled from everything she had learned. Quantum mechanics for the energy capture, temporal physics for the space folding, xenobiology for life support during the transition, diplomatic theory for coordinating three worlds to act together instead of fighting over limited ships. Page after page, she built the impossible solution. She acknowledged the gaps. She admitted the uncertainties. She showed exactly where existing knowledge ended and new discovery would need to begin. And at the end, she wrote, "This solution requires believing that the impossible is worth attempting. If we only ever choose what we know can work, we will never achieve what we cannot yet imagine. The greatest value we can save is not measured in population numbers. It is measured in our willingness to reach for something better than survival. This is what humans do. This is what all species can do, if they choose hope over mathematics." She finished writing with 30 seconds remaining. The testing screen went dark. "The grand assessment is complete," AXIOM9 announced. "Results will be posted in the Great Hall tomorrow morning." Yuna put down her pen and flexed her aching hand. Around her, students were standing, stretching, talking in exhausted voices about how they had done. Vel appeared at her side. "You wrote for the entire final hour," the crystal being said. "What possible answer requires that much space?" "An impossible one," Yuna said. She walked out of the Great Hall without explaining further. She was too tired to talk, too tired to think. She had given everything she had. Now she could only wait. That night, she slept without dreams. Her body and mind had nothing left. But somewhere deep inside, a small flame of hope still burned. She had done something no one expected. Tomorrow, she would find out if it mattered. The Great Hall was packed with students, professors, and staff. Everyone had come to see the results of the grand assessment. The air felt heavy with nervous energy, and Yuna could hear her own heartbeat in her ears as she stood near the back of the crowd. The massive holographic display in the center of the room was still dark. Any moment now, the scores would appear. Any moment now, AXIOM9 would claim its 128th consecutive victory. Yuna felt Vel standing beside her. The crystal being said nothing, but the gentle glow from Vel's body felt almost warm. Like support, like friendship. The display flickered to life. First came a AXIOM9 score, as it did every year. The number appeared in bright blue light. 99.97%. The crowd murmured with appreciation. It was an incredible score, nearly perfect. The AI had once again proven that pure logic and perfect calculation could not be matched by organic minds. Then came the student rankings. Names began appearing on the screen. Lower scores first, climbing upward. Students gasped or groaned as their results appeared. Some looked relieved, others looked disappointed. The tension in the room grew thicker with each passing moment. The top 10 appeared. 10th place, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd place, T. 94.2%. A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Tehi, the four-brain genius, had scored 3rd. The Volante's face showed no emotion, but Yuna could see the shock in those multiple eyes. 2nd place. A Volante mathematician named Sumi, 95.1%. Another surprise. Sumi was brilliant, but she had never ranked this high before. Then the display paused. First place was about to be revealed. Yuna realized she had stopped breathing. The name appeared in golden light. First place, Yuna, 99.98%. The great hall went completely silent. For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody seemed to understand what they were seeing. Then the chaos began. Voices exploded from every direction. Students shouted in disbelief. Professors talked rapidly among themselves. Someone demanded a recount. Someone else accused Yuna of cheating. The noise grew so loud that Yuna could not hear her own thoughts. But she did not need to hear anything. She just stared at her name on the display, at the number next to it, at the single word that had changed everything. First, she had done it. She had beaten Axiom-9. The AI itself requested a formal review. The Academy Council was called together immediately. Gray-robed elders and ancient scholars gathered in a side chamber while the students waited in growing confusion. Yuna was called to testify. She stood before the council and explained her final answer. The impossible evacuation plan. The star collapse energy capture. The space folding theory. The argument that hope was more valuable than calculation. The council members listened without interruption. Their faces showed nothing. When Yuna finished speaking, the head examiner rose from her seat. She was an ancient being, her species so old that her original form had been forgotten. She had lived through 3 galactic wars, had seen empires rise and fall, had watched countless students pass through this academy over thousands of years. The AI, as answer to the final scenario, was mathematically optimal, the head examiner said, her voice dry like desert wind. It would save the maximum number of lives using available resources. By any standard measure, it was correct. She paused and looked directly at Yuna. But the final question had no correct answer. It was designed to test something beyond knowledge or calculation. It tested imagination, courage, the willingness to reject despair when despair seems logical. The head examiner turned to face the rest of the council. AXIOM-9 calculated survival. This human girl calculated hope. And hope, my colleagues, is what has driven every great advancement in galactic history. The score stands. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Yuna's score remained 98%, the highest any organic being had ever achieved. The first time in 128 years that anyone had outscored Axiom-9 when she walked back into the Great Hall. The reaction was different than before. The shouting had stopped. The accusations had faded. Instead, students parted to let her through, watching her with expressions she had never seen directed at a human before. Respect. He approached her first. The four-brain genius stood before Yuna and did something unexpected. Tehi bowed. I did not understand your methods, Tehi said. I still do not fully understand them, but I was wrong to dismiss them. You have taught me something today. Yuna returned the bow. We can learn from each other. That is why we are all here. Vel found her next. The crystal being's glow was brighter than Yuna had ever seen it. You did something impossible, Vel said. Humans do that sometimes. Vel made a sound that Yuna finally recognized as laughter. Yes, you do. I am honored to be your roommate, Yuna. Ji-Wan appeared at the edge of the crowd. The teaching assistant did not approach, did not say anything. He just smiled and nodded once. His eyes looked wet. The celebration continued for hours. Students who had ignored Yuna all year wanted to talk to her now. Professors invited her to special research programs. The Academy's communication channels exploded with news of what had happened. The human girl who beat the AI. The impossible score. The power of hope. But eventually, Yuna slipped away from the crowds. She walked to the observation deck on the top level of the station, where massive windows looked out at the endless stars. She stood there alone, watching the universe stretch out before her. Somewhere out there, billions of lights away, a small farming world orbited under an orange sky. A little boy was probably sleeping right now, dreaming of the sister who had promised to make him proud. She pulled out her communicator and began to write. "Dear Do-Yun," she wrote. "I did it. I really did it. Everyone said it was impossible, and I did it anyway. Do you know why? Because you believed in me. Because Mom and Dad taught me to never give up. Because our family has been doing impossible things for generations, even if those things were just growing rice in difficult soil or raising children with not enough food." She paused, looking out at the stars. "I'm coming home soon," she continued. "And when I get there, I am going to teach you everything I learned. Not just the math and the physics, though I will teach you that too. I am going to teach you the most important lesson of all. Being human is not a weakness. It is our greatest strength. We feel things. We hope things. We refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. That is what makes us special." She finished the letter with 3 simple words. "I love you." She sent the message and watched it disappear into the vast network that connected all the worlds of the galaxy. Behind her, footsteps approached. Vel appeared at her side, crystal body reflecting the starlight. "What will you do now?" Vel asked. Yuna smiled. "Go home, see my family. Then figure out how to actually build that star collapse energy system I wrote about." "You know that is probably impossible." "Probably," Yuna agreed. "But probably is not the same as definitely." Vel made the laughing sound again. "You truly are the strangest being I have ever met." "Thank you," Yuna said. "I will take that as a compliment." They stood together in comfortable silence, the human girl and the crystal being, watching the stars burn their ancient light across the darkness. Somewhere in the academy below, a XIOM-9 was already analyzing what had happened, running simulations, trying to understand how a primitive species from a small farming world had done what logic said was impossible. The A would never fully understand, but that was okay. Some things could not be calculated. Some things had to be felt. And humans, Yuna, had learned, were very good at feeling their way toward the impossible.